they did an episode featuring Shakespeare and witches. Why, oh why, didn't they put in the old classic double bubble boil and trouble? Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, I am a geek. You are watching Kevin the Geek, and it is time for another Doctor Who review. This is Season 3, Episode 2, The Shakespeare Code. Remember, if you are new to the channel, please do smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit those notification bell so you get notified when all my videos go live. Also, if you are new to the channel, please do make sure you check out all the rest of the content on the channel. We do Marvel Mondays, Torchwood Tuesdays, Ted Lasso Thursdays, where we do loads of reactions, loads of reviews, loads of stuff on the channel. Also, a special episode this coming Saturday. There will be a special reaction, which is Doctor Who and Torchwood related. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, so I'd like it to be a little bit of a surprise for you. But if you will be interested, it will be going live at 6 o'clock on Saturday UK time. But for today, we are, of course, talking William Shakespeare, witches, the Doctor, and kind of a little bit of racism with this episode. So I want to start with that aspect because it's something that every time I've watched this episode, it's always stuck out as a little bit of a sore thumb for me, because they go to great lengths to highlight from Martha the fact that, being of a darker skin tone, she is worried about potential racism. And if it was just for that, you wouldn't really think anything more of it. But the fact that you have William Shakespeare actually acknowledging that, and then you have a singular kind of one of the extras in the crowd at the Globe Theatre, you have someone who is of African descent there. It just always stuck in my mind, and I was always thinking, is there a little bit more to it? Did they need to highlight it, quite as much? And I will admit that my historical knowledge of that subject is not the greatest, but I have done research in the intervening years, and it is actually surprising that there were more people around in medieval England that are of African descent than realistically I ever suspected, and it would be quite conceivable that there would be someone who may be of African descent in the crowd at the Globe Theatre. So that was a nice little touch in the end. I do also think it's quite right as well in the episode that William Shakespeare does kind of address the tone of Martha's skin, because he did in fact write about, in his words, in Shakespeare's words, Moorish characters, like I think it was in Titan Andromedus, and I think there's also another character in, I believe it was Othello. Now, my Shakespeare knowledge isn't the greatest. I am the kind of person, I know more Macbeth, because that's the one I kind of learnt at school, and I know more a little bit of the other plays, like your Taming of the Shrews and your Midsummer Night Dreams, Romeo and Juliet, obviously, and things like that. So I like the fact that they've kind of tried to address these kind of things, because it is what Shakespeare, would have encountered during his lifetime. Now, your general story, I think, was quite good, because they've done, again, what Doctor Who seemingly likes to do within, especially the Russell T Davies era, where you take a historical figure. Obviously, we have had, so far, up to this point, this will now be the third, you've had Charles Dickens, you've had Queen Victoria, and now William Shakespeare. And what they tried to do is put a Doctor Who sci-fi spin on a kind of historical event, and something that kind of is a little bit of a mystery. And you know what? I don't mind that, because I think if you at least are going to do that, at least you can be a little bit more creative, I think, with the way that you write the characters. If you were just putting in this is episode and here is Shakespeare, would it kind of have the same impact? Maybe, maybe not. But because they're trying to put a little bit of a play, and also at the same time kind of being a little bit educational, because I will admit, Love Labour's Won, and technically actually the original Love Labour's Lost, they're not plays that I really knew anything about. It's not ones I'd ever really heard of. So it was interesting to hear of a potential additional play that had never seen the light of day. Now, the writing for the Doctor and Martha within this whole episode was a little bit mixed, and then I think that then in turn kind of impacted their characters a little bit. Martha, I don't feel quite had enough to do in this episode, and what they tried to do with the Doctor was this kind of whole trying to cope and move on with a new companion, whilst at the same time kind of linking back to his time with Rose and how, you know, she was such a big part of his life that she wouldn't really be got over very, very quickly. And I like the way that they sort of addressed that. Unfortunately, it did kind of leave a situation where it obviously opened up the door to Martha's eventual love interest in the Doctor, with like them sharing a bed and everything. So, yeah, that not so keen on. The villains were fine. You know, the Carrier Knights, they were clearly written to be a sort of Doctor Who spoof on the Three Witches from Macbeth, and I think they've done it in such a way that it could kind of almost be like something that the William Shakespeare would kind of think back to these events and then in turn then use them in Macbeth, you know, much further down the line. But they were fine in what they did, and it gave a nice dynamic. Particularly the scene where the Doctor was talking about how they're using words, and although people at that time kind of used it as magic, or considered it as magic, whereas for the Carrier Knights, using words was no real difference to us using mathematics and doing things like splitting the atom. So that was a nice little touch, and that was a nice little moment for the dialogue. I'll give them that. The other thing I will say from a historical point of view, this is one that I really do like, and it's a little throwaway line, and I think it would have been nice to have explained it a little bit more. It's one that I did know, because I did when I was doing history at school in GCSEs. One of our topics was looking at medicine through the ages, and we looked at medieval medicine, and the way that they kind of thought that illnesses were caused back there was through an imbalance of the humours. You had humours of, I believe from memory, it was blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. And if you had a situation where you didn't have enough of a particular humour, let's say blood, for example, blood was taken out of the equation, you would have an imbalance of the humours, and that would then in turn cause you to have whatever your illness was. And so I believe phlegm links to water, so that would be effectively, if you had taken one of the others out, that could have been conceivable that they would have thought, yes, he's died through drowning, through an imbalance of the humours. Like I said, it was a throwaway line. I would have liked them to have, you know, kind of lent into it a little bit more, but that's just me being a little bit picky. So Dean Lennox Kelly, of course, played Shakespeare, and I thought he did a good job. He did a good job in what he needed to do with the role. He was a little bit more modern for my liking, but overall he did a really good job. Music of this episode I really liked, because they've gone away from a little bit of the more orchestral soundtracks, what they've done so far in this series, and they've tried to make it feel a little bit more classical. Maybe they've added in more instruments that would have been consistent with the time. You had a feel of sort of like acoustic guitar, kind of similar to like, what's it called? I think it's a lute or something, you know. So it just gave that feel to it and just gave it a nice balance. Set was great, costumes are great. I love it when it's in a historical setting. They do really well to make it feel like you're in that, and typically that's why I think my historical episodes will always get a tiny bit of a boost up because of things like that. There wasn't a lot of special effects in this one, but where I did see it, it was Yeah, a bit of an awkward one. It's kind of where the steam and smoke and everything was coming out of the Globe Theatre. That was, you know, for something that was done back in 2007, it looks very dated now. But overall, I really enjoyed this episode. And looking back, I think, like I do with a lot of these, I think I probably judged it a little bit more harshly. This time, I was able to just kind of go with the flow and enjoy a nice, frolicking, good adventure with Shakespeare and witches. But I have to score the episode, so if you are new to the channel, the way I do my scores is there are 10 categories, each gets a score out of 10 to give an overall score out of 100. But for now, here are the scores. And there you have it. So, the episode The Shakespeare Code has scored 71 marks out of 100, which means that it is a B-rated episode. What are your thoughts in this episode? Please do drop comments down below. There are 3 playlists currently on the channel for each of the first 3 series for Doctor Who, so please go and check those out. And I've also done a couple of Doctor Who rankings, so please go and check those out. But for today, my name's Kevin, I am a geek, and you have been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.